All right, thank you all for coming today. We have a very wet and rainy day here in Anyang, South Korea. Today is October 15th, and we're looking at chapter 15 of Daehaeng Sunim's translation of the Diamond Sutra, the Great Unfolding. I'll go ahead and, as I often do, I'll start with the title. The title is The Virtue and Merit That Comes from Embracing the Teachings and Inner Spiritual Practice as One is Beyond Imagining and Reaches Everywhere. This is something that is, to me, fairly common with Daehaeng Sunim's teachings, is that they work on more than one level at the same time. Literally in Korean it says sutras and meditation, or sun, embracing them as not two. That virtue and merit is endless. But depending on how you read it, it sounds like embracing these together as one, it produces this kind of great virtue and merit. But actually, from reading the chapter, it sounds more like embracing either one as one. Whether you're teaching or studying the sutras, embracing that as one. Whether you're practicing meditation or working on inner spiritual practice, embracing that as one. Seeing everything that you encounter as one produces this kind of virtue and merit, regardless of which one you're doing. And we'll see this in a minute, but one of the really fascinating differences between Daehaeng Sunim's translation and traditional translations is the comparison between the virtue and merit that comes from studying the sutras and the virtue and merit that comes from inner spiritual practice or sort of meditation, traditional things. Because in traditional translations or traditional commentary, it's if you gave people a lot of stuff, that would produce some virtue and merit. But if you taught them the sutra, that would produce vastly more virtue and merit, right? That's how traditional interpretations and translations approach this chapter. But the thing about the Korean translation is that there's no greater than aspect. If you practice through mind, helping other people, if you practice through mind, giving energy to other people, that produces unimaginable, uncountable, unperceptible virtue and merit. If you teach someone about this inner light, about this inner spiritual practice, and the fact that they are not two, they are not separate from everyone else, and you teach them such that they can truly perceive that for themselves, that produces infinite, unmeasurable virtue and merit as well. And it's really fascinating to me because there's no greater than, one is better than the other is not in this translation, which makes sense because if you're talking about the whole, something that, let's see, what was I thinking about this? Because this kind of virtue and merit comes from the non-dual functioning whole. So there's no limitation on it. There's no way to say, doing this activity non-dually produces more virtue and merit or less virtue and merit than this other activity, because it's non-dual. There's no division. There's no separation. So whichever one you're doing, whatever you're doing, if you're doing it non-dually, the virtue and merit is infinite. There's no division, there's no separation inherent in that. And that's a point that doesn't come across in traditional commentary. It's quite fascinating here. Let's see. One of the So let me start by reading page 163. Subhuti, there are men and women who in the mornings help people unconditionally by manifesting into the world with 1,000 million different forms. Day and night they give aid, responding from their complete inherent mind, manifesting with more different shapes than there are sands of the Ganges. At all hours of the day, they've given immeasurable help and compassion by responding from this complete inherent mind, transforming and manifesting with more shapes than there are sands of the Ganges. So, it's like, oh, okay, there's people out there who just help like this, right? Well, who are these people? Where did they come from? And we see that, the answer to that a little bit on page 173. Where are all these people who are of this great ability, who are selflessly helping, coming from? And on page 173, it goes, Subhuti, in any realm or era with these non-dual teachings, there are wonderful beings who will thus brighten their minds, and, as a matter of course, will share the nectar of one mind far and wide. Know that if you brighten your mind like this, your fundamental mind will become a pagoda. If your fundamental mind, continuing on the next page, if your fundamental mind becomes such a pagoda, connecting to all beings, caring for and respecting them, it will flow and manifest freely according to beings' needs and their ability to understand. With such a beautiful heart, the fragrant intentions you give rise to will spread loving help far and wide to beings of every shape and kind. So this touches on something we've seen before in chapter 6 and chapter, I want to say 5, where the Subhuti basically says, these are great teachings, but is anybody else going to understand them? People who are right here with you, he's talking to the Buddha, people who are right here with you can see this manifested for themselves, and so they have faith in it. But in other times and places, if I go into the big city or if I go into this place, it's just like a hellhole, right? This place may be, there's poverty and there's suffering and just hardship. And can people in that circumstance understand this at all? If I go out to some village or some other place and try to teach people about this, will they have any idea what I'm talking about? And so, but the Buddha says, no, any place, any time, any place, there's people who, whether they have the words for it or not, they pick up on this fundamental non-duality that we all share. And, to use the words of the Sutra here, they cultivate the virtues associated with that. Other people's life is my life. Other people's mind is my mind. Other people's body is my body. And they have a sense of that. And so at a minimum, I don't want to hurt other people, right? At a minimum, I want to avoid hurting other people. And if I have a deeper experience, then I'm aware that literally your happiness is my happiness. Your pain is my pain. And so I just, I respond to that. If I, the common example is if I have money in my pocket and you're hungry, me putting the money from this pocket into that pocket doesn't change anything for me, right? If I move money from my right pocket to my left pocket, I don't think I've just lost money. If I truly understand non-duality, it's the same thing. If I use what I have to help you, or vice versa, nothing changed. It's like somebody was joking about missing equipment in the army, right? Because he said, one unit stole equipment from another unit. And their answer was, why should anybody care? At the end of the day, the army still has it all, right? And it's the same thing. When we truly perceive this non-duality, nothing's changed. It's, oh, something was needed over here, and it went there. Or something was needed here, and it came here. If, you can't make a hole in the water, right? If you take out something from the water, it fills in. If you pile up extra, it smooths out and evens out. And so, regardless of the era, regardless of the place or the time, there's always going to be people who pick up on this. And picking up on this, if they've gotten to the point where they can teach themselves, then they can start learning how to help other people through this fundamental mind, just through raising intentions. We see lots of this in the West right now, in the U.S., where it was kind of like manifest your success, and it was a little bit in English New Agey, right? And if you're a Buddhist, it's kind of like, well, that's kind of true. You're sort of missing a few points, but the starting point wasn't bad, right? The idea that the intentions I give rise to direct where things tend to go. Now, there's karmic affinity, and there's karmic affinity and karma, and things like this that affect what's, the range of what's possible in there that doesn't take into account. But the basic principle isn't wrong. It's, in a way, it's like goal setting, where you have a clear visualization of where you want to go. And knowing where you want to go makes it much easier to actually get there. And the mechanism of why that works isn't, we can't say we fully understand that. There's always theories about why that works, but all we need to know as practitioners is the fact that it does kind of work, right? Sunim called this spiritual practice scientific. She said, oh, it's very scientific. And lots of people kind of went, what? Believe in your true self that you can't see, and trust what's coming up to you, to this essence that you can't see, and then observe what happens. And on the surface, there's some problems with the scientific method in how well you can replicate an experiment and how well you can observe the results. But actually, it does reflect science from a long time ago and now, in that you have A, at step A, something happens. You don't know what happens at B and C, but then you see the outcome at D. And so you start making guesses about what might have happened at B, in the middle, but you don't actually have to know what happens in the middle. The first step is knowing that if I input this, I get this output. When they were discovering oxygen, they didn't know what oxygen was, but they noticed if they put a lit match inside of a glass jar, the match went out. And if they put any kind of an animal inside the glass jar after the match went out, the animal keeled over and passed out. And if they took off the jar fast enough, the animal came back to life. So they didn't know what oxygen was. But just from looking at what happens on this side and what happens on that side, they were able to start coming up with an idea of how things worked. And so that's why Sunim always said, observe, observe, observe. Entrust what you're going through and observe what happens. Did it, if I entrusted it this way with this intention, how did things work out? If I said, if I sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't work out. and just start with the question, why didn't it work out? And pay attention. And then later, at some point, you may realize, oh, that's what I'm doing. That's why that didn't work out. Or I had some fixed expectation. I wasn't really letting go of it. I was like trying to get rid of it. Letting go means, so this is letting go, right? I'm not clinging to it. I'm not trying to throw it away. But when we say letting go, sometimes it's like, especially uncomfortable things and unpleasant things, it's like, go away, become something better, hurry. But as we observe and pay attention, we begin to notice what's going on. And we begin to make small corrections to our behavior and to our outlook and to our understanding. So what Daehaeng Kunsim has been saying is that wherever you find yourself, people are going to be picking up on non-duality. They're going to be perceiving this, even if there's no other teachings around, even if there's no other Buddhists around, even if there's no spiritual people around. Some people are going to pick up on that, and they're going to say, no, even if they can't talk about it to other people, they're going to say, no, that's better. That's a better way to do things. I can't say why, but I just feel more comfortable doing things that way. So one of the things that Daehaeng Kunsim talks about in this chapter 15, is that the intentions so I just read this on page 175. The fragrant intentions you give rise to will spread loving help far and wide to beings of every kind. And that's because you are functioning at this deep level of non-duality. What I feel, there's not a separate me doing things. Because we're not two, the intention I give rise to that isn't going to be something that oppresses you, right? If I'm a normal person, especially with the habits of greed and desire, if I'm not careful, the intentions I give rise to are for my benefit, right? And the more extreme you go, the more I don't care what happens to you. If it goes far enough, we call that person a psychopath, right? You're not a person, you're just a thing to help me feel better or become wealthier or richer or have more pleasure in my life or something. And to a certain, like I said, if that goes far, if that lack of care for you, lack of concern for you goes far enough, we call that psychopathy or sociopathy. They're kind of the same thing. But on the other side, if your satisfaction is my satisfaction, if your pain is my pain, then I'm not going to try to push you into something that makes you hurt. Unless I'm at a certain level where I can see very clearly, it's like, oh, she needs to do this. He needs to do this, right? Probably nobody really likes exercise, but most people realize I have to exercise. Life's a little more pleasant if I exercise somewhat regularly. And so pushing you into something that you may not like immediately that's better for you long term, that's like the job of every parent, right? No, you can't eat sugar all day long. Yes, you have to go to bed early. But I don't want to. I want to stay up. That's not good for you. So no, you don't get to do that. So even though we may be able to function at this level of non-duality, there may also be an aspect where what you need is not what you think you need, right? Everybody, I said this before, everybody thinks they want to win the lottery, but 60 or 70% of American lottery winners are bankrupt within 5 or 10 years. Bankrupt and divorced. Right? So it's like, there was somebody who, his children died of drug overdoses and all kinds of horrible stories. And so everybody thinks they want this thing that will solve all their problems. But in fact, we don't necessarily have a good perspective on what's healthy for us. And that goes back to why Daehaeng Sunim said, entrust unconditionally. What you think is going well, what you think is going badly, just entrust that and go forward. Because even the stuff you think is going badly might actually be going good for you. Because she said, even not working is still working. Right? When it seems like your fundamental mind isn't working, isn't taking care of things, sort of what you might be saying is, I didn't get what I want, so obviously it isn't working. But not getting what you wanted may be the best for you. And there's obviously so many examples of that. People who are late for work on 9/11, the trade tower attacks in the US, or all kinds of examples along those lines. There was somebody in Korea who they're taking their whole family on a vacation to Guam. And they paid for this big trip to Guam, and they got a flat tire on the way to the airport. And one thing led to another, and they missed their flight. And the plane crashed, landing at Guam. So it's like, what's good and what's bad is kind of hard to know sometimes. So just, keep entrusting both sides unconditionally. Okay. Let me look at page 171 and read the second paragraph there, the long paragraph. Why is there such virtue and merit, Subhuti? Because those people who are still dwelling in narrow views tend to cling to every little thing, so it's hard for them to take even one step forward, much less escape from the harness of ignorance. Thus, when you engage in spiritual practice as one mind, when you study the teachings as one mind, seeing into their marrow and understanding their essence and applying them throughout the world of your daily life, if you share what you've learned with those who are still trapped, teaching them according to their ability to understand, they will be able to free themselves from the wheel of suffering. The virtue and merit of this will be incredible. And the last line's kind of a funny one, because there's no adjectives, there's no real adjectives in the Korean. The virtue and merit of this will be big. And in English, we describe that as a very flat sentence. Oh yeah, there'll be a lot. And it's like there just aren't enough words to describe how big that is. So Sunim just throws out a word. Yeah, there'll be a lot. You can almost hear the words, don't worry about it, there'll be a lot. And the key point here is that, so on the one hand, people who don't know how to go forward, sometimes if you don't know how to go forward, you can really be stuck for a long time, right? Daehaeng Sunim talked about the spirits of the dead who are stuck in the same place for 200 or 300 years, right? And we may not be that bad, but if you don't know about, for example, viewing things positively, not blaming other people. You can be practicing meditation in meditation halls for 20, 30, 40 years. But if you still have that habit of blaming other people for what's happening, looking down on other people, or just viewing things negatively, you won't make any progress. you'll make as much progress as you can, but that habit of blaming other people for what's happening to you is accidentally reinforcing this very dualistic worldview. And so all your progress from like all the years of sore knees and sitting gets canceled out, gets held back, because you're missing one little piece. And so if you can teach other people about this one little piece, if that's the piece they needed, it's just like, oh my gosh, how did I not know that? I knew that, but I didn't know that. I didn't put that into practice. It's like, And one of the things, so the very next lines that we see here are, when you engage in spiritual practice as one mind, when you study the teachings as one mind. So I think you can read this as whichever one you're doing. If you're doing one, if you're doing both, if you're doing the other one, it doesn't matter. If you're doing it as one mind, you'll get to that deep point. You'll get to that point where you understand for yourself and where you can actually share it with other people in a meaningful way. And the sharing, I think, will happen automatically for the most part, because you'll be one with them. And it's like what I said before, if somebody needs something, it's just, my other self needs it. Okay, here you go. My twin needs it. Oh, you need a rain jacket? All right, here you go. And there's no thought of it. It's like, there's a need? Okay, here you go. And so whatever you're doing, if you're studying the sutras, if you're practicing meditation, or doing both together, if you're doing it as one mind, trying to let go of discriminations, trying to entrust unconditionally, you'll still wind up in the same spot, and you'll still automatically be helping other people. Okay, I'll go ahead and stop here at the English part of the discussion here, and we'll continue on with the small group discussion in a minute. All right, thank you very much.